it's Carol from Allergy Free Living, and today we're going to be making apple pork chops. There's a little bit of prep that I did beforehand. You're going to need apples, a couple of apples depending on how many pork chops that you're going to use. And I take the pit out from the center, and then I slice them so that all that you have is a little circle, an empty circle. And in this recipe, I'm going to have you use a cast iron. It's really perfect. And that's what I used with the apples. I get butter, I melt it in the cast iron, and then I take the apples that are not cooked and I put them in the frying pan, and on low, by the way, or not so low that you can hear it bubbling, but you don't want it smoking. So once I put all the apples in the frying pan with the butter, then I took brown sugar and I just put the brown sugar and I sprinkled it on the top of the apples. And watch the apples. When you see them getting, a little soft, then flip them over and you're going to see the brown from the melted brown sugar. It looks really good and it smells good. And so you're going to get it so that it's not mushy, the apples. And when they look like they're, a little softer, then you take them and you put them in a dish like I did here. This is what I had. And you set them aside, okay? And then you're going to, if I have a couple of cast iron pans, but maybe you don't. If you don't have any, then just use a frying pan that's a heavy frying pan, not really light. They cook easier that way if they're heavier. So again, I'm going to put olive oil inside the bottom of this. And my pork chops, I lightly covered the top and the bottom with the olive oil. Now, I think it's important that you do that because the only seasoning that I use, and I don't know if I've used it before, it's called Montreal Steak Seasoning, and it's by Grill Masters. And it's really very good. And this is all you need. So that's why I'm having you put a little bit of the oil on top of the pork chops. So I'm going to sprinkle this, and I'm very liberal with it. Very liberal with it. You can see. Okay? And then you take a fork, and you're going to press the seasoning down. And if some of it falls off, and you want to put a little bit more, because it is going to come off, and that's why I say liberal. So I did put more on it, and I patted it down. Now, you want your cast iron pan to be hot. So I'm going to take the pork chop with the side that has the Montreal seasoning, and I'm going to put it face down. The same thing with this guy, face down. Now I'm just going to put it a little bit higher, and then I'm going to take the rest and I'm going to sprinkle it on the side that's facing us. Again, liberally enough, and use my fork. I'll just show you what I'm doing, okay? You can see that the pan is heavy. That is, but there is nothing like a cast iron pot. I made the cornbread, and I had a skillet cornbread. Oh my goodness, it is so good. Okay, so you're going to cook, depending on how thick your pork chops are, it might be, for this, maybe 2 minutes. So let me put my timer on. Now, don't forget, some people might say, well, 2 minutes, depending on how thick it is. Whenever I'm done with pork chops, chicken, or a lot of dishes, steak especially. I take my steak and I put it, either I leave it in the cast iron, I usually put it on a plate, and I cover it with foil or another plate, and I set it aside for like 15 minutes, 10 minutes, because you're allowing the juices to set inside. If you cut it like right when you take it off of here, it doesn't let it rest, as they say. And you need to let the meat rest for the juices to get all in. When you cut it, they just come out. So it's a perfect way to do it. So that's what I do. So if I'm going to do 2 minutes on, you know, the one side and then flip it over, and I'll do it for another 2 minutes, and then you're going to let it sit, and it should be done. But if you want to do 3 minutes, you can do 3 minutes. Another thing that I'm going to do with this is that I take my fork and I press the pork chops down, because I really want that seasoning to stay on the pork chop itself. I want it to be like a hard crust there. And so you don't want to actually move the pork chop itself from the bottom, because if you do that, that's when you might lose all that nice, great hard crust if it works out. That's why if you put it on a hot skillet, it should work like without a problem. Okay, so now I'm going to, I don't know if here's my timer. Okay, let me peek this. Okay, this is what it looks like. See, as it's dripping, but that's okay. It's my counter, not yours, right? I just wanted to see how it was faring there. All right, now, that's what it looks like. You could leave it on for 3 minutes if you want. It's up to you. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the apples that I had already fried, and I'm going to put it on the side that I just flipped. I'm going to do it on both. I'll show you, don't worry. You know I always do. And this is so good. And when you're done and you take this off and put it on a plate, or you can leave it in there, the sauce that comes out is fantastic. Now, I've got a lot of apples left, so I'm just kind of chunking it on there. I'm going to show you what it looks like. All right. Now, how does that look? Doesn't that look really good? And so, I'm just going to get you from the other side. It looks like it's a lot, and it is. It's piled high, but don't forget, and by the way, I did have some sauce in here. I'm going to pour that on there. Don't forget that even if the apples are piled high, when you cover it with foil, when they're done, when the 2 minutes are up, and I had put it on for 2 minutes, it's going to like flatten it, and they're just going to sink down more. So that is this here. Okay, now, all right, the bell is going to ring. Let me turn this off and turn this off. Now, this is it, okay? Now, you could leave it on this, or you could put it on a plate, and I think I'll put it on a plate. And there you go. All right. There you go. Now, if you look at it and you say, geez, you know, I want more time, then that's okay. You can do that. You can do as much time as you want on it. but you're just gonna cover it with foil, okay? And let it sit for maybe 15 minutes. I think that that would be fine. So, I did do one that has been sitting and waiting, just so you can see. Now, this is it. Do you see the gravy? That's, okay, there, you see that gravy? Now, that's what happens when you let something rest, when they tell you to let your meat rest on the plate. And that's what your meal is going to look like. And believe me, the gravy that's on this is really good. It's very, very good. It tastes delicious. I'd say if you want, can you imagine if you made a plate of rice and once all this was done, you just plop this right on top of the rice with the gravy? I think that's a really good idea. Okay, everybody, I hope you like this, and we will be seeing you again.